Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. One of the problems with very smart guys who make a lot of money and use the data to make their determination on which precious metal to buy is that these guys make a lot more money than a middle class person. You know, a middle class person might make 50,000 a year or something and might only be able to save about 10,000 bucks a year or less. Right? But the coders and chemical engineers and other people who make good money, you know, they might make 150,000 to 600,000 bucks a year, right? And thus they can often afford to spend far more on precious metals every year. You know, some of them can afford to spend more than 100,000 bucks on precious metals each year. Because, you know, if your cost of living is 200,000 bucks a year, but you make 500,000 bucks a year, that's $300,000 in profit. You know, imagine how much you can spend on that. I mean, some of it you want to spend on fun toys, you know, a nice car, whatever. You know, but like you could easily spend, you know, 100,000 on precious metals each year, you know, easily. So for every one of those highly intelligent guys who makes very good money and uses the data to determine which precious metal to buy, there are a lot of poorer people, middle class people who make far less money. And those middle class people buy silver because they don't have as much money. Maybe they buy some gold too, but because they don't have nearly as much money, they want to buy the precious metal, which is the best deal. You know, the most undervalued. The precious metal, which is, you know, potentially the most profitable in the long term. And so they buy silver. You know, they buy more silver and less gold. Whereas the upper middle class guys make a lot more money and thus save much more money and are more data driven. And so they save in gold because gold appreciates more than silver does above inflation, right? Gold is historically speaking, you look at the data, gold is better to buy than silver, right? Silver goes up more than inflation as well, but not as much as gold does. So the guys who make more money by buying gold are enacting a self-fulfilling prophecy. They have just much buying power. Oh, right, yeah, I forgot to say as. They have just as much buying power, if not more buying power, than the average middle class earners do as a whole. You know, you take all the upper middle class people who earn, you know, let's say $150,000 to $700,000 a year, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you want to say 200,000 to 600,000, whatever. You know, they make a lot more money than the average person, right? Like these people, you take their whole group, and then you take the whole rest of the group of middle class and lower class people, and like, very much like how they always do that thing, they say, these top 10 or top 100 people in the US or the world or whatever own as much wealth as the whole rest of the bottom 50% of the world, right? Like, same type of thing here, right? These upper middle class people who make a few $100,000 a year, let's say 300,000 to 400,000 a year, these people have just as much buying power as a group as the middle class and lower class people do, even though there's way more middle class and lower class people than there are upper middle class people that I'm talking about, right? So, you know, they have so much buying power. This means that when they all buy gold, because of it being a data-driven choice, they're actually driving up the price of gold and thereby making it a self-fulfilling prophecy. Gold goes up because they think it's going to go up. They think it's going to go up because of past data. Past data, you know, it went up in the past because people thought it would go up, so they bought it instead of silver. You know, same thing. They think it's going to go up again because of the past data, which was also a self-fulfilling prophecy to a degree. And then so now they continue to buy gold because they think it's going to continue to go up. And then when it does go up, they think that they were right. And they did the data-driven choice and they did the smart thing when really the only reason it went up is because they bought it. You know what I mean? They're making it go up. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, one upper middle class guy who makes $450,000 a year can buy as much silver or gold each year as 10 middle class guys can, right? So he moves the market just as much as 10 middle class guys all buying silver do, right? So just him by himself, he can massively outbuy them, you know, or him as a group, or, you know, especially considering there's probably more of these upper middle class people who are smart and buy gold or silver than there are middle or lower class people who are smart and buy silver. You see? So they're probably able to move the market a lot more because of that as well. You know what I mean? So, you know, they buy gold and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And some middle-class people buy gold as well, and some upper middle-class people buy silver as well. But for the most part, I think a lot more upper middle-class people buy gold, and a lot of middle-class and lower-class people buy silver. And the rich buy gold as well. So, of course, the price of gold goes up more than silver. Governments are buying it, the rich are buying it, and the upper middle class are buying it. Right, but if these upper middle class guys bought silver instead of gold, it would be like doubling the percentage of the rest of us who buy silver each month. Because, like I said, they have the same buying power. This little group of maybe, I don't know, 5% of people or 10% of people, they have as much buying power as all the rest of the other bottom 90%. You know what I mean? And then silver would become extremely hard to find if all these top guys who earn, you know, 400,000 bucks a year were buying silver instead of gold. silver would become extremely hard to find, sold out everywhere. Or the price of silver would have to rise significantly in order to make it so that more silver is produced each year, so that the shortage of silver in all the coin shops comes to an end. Because, when the price goes up, this means that miners can now mine areas that were no longer economical, that were no longer economical to mine, or they were never economical to mine, because there's not enough silver in the ground to make it to where they can pull it out at a profitable level, right? Like it might have cost, if the price of silver is $20 an ounce, and a certain area has silver in the ground, but only enough to where, like, it would cost $30 for them to pull the silver out of the ground per ounce. Well, then they'd be losing money, so they can't mine that ground until the price of silver goes up. You see, so, then a shortage would eventually make it so that, silver is way more rare, and then that massive demand would cause the price to go way up, and then the way higher price would make it profitable for mines to mine areas that they were never able to mine before, and now a lot more silver starts coming onto the market again, thus bringing the shortage to an end. But of course, to get a mine up and running and stuff like that can take, I think, years or something. It can take a long time, right? So this means that this is not a quick process or anything, right? So we could absolutely drive the price way up if, the top people, the people, not top, but like, top IQs, but just upper middle class people making $300,000 to $400,000 a year. If those people are buying silver and little or no gold, we could absolutely drive the price of silver up so high it'd be insane. You know what I mean? I've heard that if even just 3% of the people in the U.S. bought silver every month, it would completely empty all the precious metals from the shelves of all the silver and gold sellers. Because I think only like 1 or 2% or something of the people in the U.S. buy silver or gold or anything. Right, like almost hardly anybody in the U.S., like 0.5 or 1 or 2%, something like that, buy precious metals every month, and the rest of them don't buy at all. Unless they're buying like a wedding ring or something. I think 3% is just roughly double the percentage of the people who already buy precious metals. So just by buying silver, the upper middle class guys could radically harm the U.S. government. Because, like I said, if like 1.5% of people now buy precious metals, right, and half of them are buying silver, and the other half of the buying power, not of the numbers of people, but the other half of the buying power is the small percentage of that 1.5%, maybe 0.1% of that 1.5% is upper middle class people who are in $300,000 to $400,000 a year, and they're buying mainly gold, right? So if they all started buying silver instead of gold, it would be like doubling the amount of people buying silver. And then that would massively, cause a massive shortage in silver. And then the price would go way, way up to rebalance, how much is available to how much the demand is. Because, supply and demand, like Old Man Flappy Nuts was talking about recently in a good comment he left, that's how the free market, delivers stuff. The free market decides where stuff goes, and it decides, like, who gets how much, and that there's enough production and all that. And it does that by the price discovery mechanism, right? He was absolutely right. His comment, that was a really good comment. It showed that he really is starting to, I think, I don't know, maybe he always understood, but like, I think he definitely has quite a bit of a grasp on, how the price discovery mechanism works and what it's for and what it does, right? It's really encouraging to see someone who actually understands that, because a lot of people, most people, probably 99% of people don't understand the price discovery mechanism and how important it is and how stupid it is to let government say, where stuff goes or who's going to do it or how much is going to be ordered or what the price is going to be. That just screws up the free market. It just screws up the price discovery mechanism, and therefore it screws up, how much should be produced and where it should go to and stuff, So, he was absolutely right. It was really encouraging to see that Old Man Flappy Nuts he understands the price discovery mechanism. It was cool to see that. You know what I mean? It's encouraging. Because he's probably one of the top 1% of people in that sense now already. Because hardly anybody understands the price discovery mechanism. So if he understands it, he's already way ahead of the game. Most people don't have a fucking clue about how the price discovery mechanism works. Even I think a lot of the people in government or in finance don't understand how the price discovery mechanism works. So, Old Man Flappy Nuts is already way ahead of all of them. By understanding how the price discovery mechanism works. But, yeah, like I said, even just 3% of the population buying silver would already, probably create a massive shortage, And so just by buying silver, the upper middle class guys could radically harm the U.S. government and its price suppression of silver. And they are buying, but instead, unfortunately, they're buying based on data, which itself only exists because people like them are chasing the data of the past, set by billionaires and the government and other, upper middle class people, who could buy a lot of, precious metals. The data is a self-perpetuating thing. They're perpetuating a self-fulfilling prophecy that just goes on and on. The prophecy being that, gold is more valuable and a better thing to buy than silver, and it goes up more in price and all that. Gold goes up more than silver because they buy it more. And the reason they buy it more is because it goes up more. And the only reason they buy it more is because it goes up more. And the only reason it goes up more is because they buy it more. You know what I mean? Like, they buy more because it goes up more, and it goes up more because they buy more, and they buy more because it goes up more. See what I mean? They are making it go up. Silver would be the metal going up if all these upper middle class precious metals fans were buying silver instead of gold, like they should be doing. Like, they should be buying silver instead of gold, but they're not. But if they were, silver would be going way up in price and gold would not be, or at least not as much, right? By buying gold based on the data that they are actually throwing the average person under the bus. These upper middle class people are. If you make $300,000 to $400,000 a year and you're spending most of your precious metals money on gold, then you're actually throwing the average person under the bus. Because the average precious metals buyer, I should say, owns silver, not gold. So these upper middle class guys are essentially continuing the crime of 1873. They should be taking the side of the average person, at least the average precious metals buyer, I mean. They should not be the upper middle class guys like this should not be taking the side of the billionaires and the governments by buying gold. By just buying what the data says would be smart for them to buy, that is gold, they are essentially choosing profit above principles. And yet if they bought silver instead of gold, then not only would the silver price be much harder to suppress, maybe impossible, and not only would the silver price be much higher, not only would it'd be more expensive for the U.S. to wage war as well because of so much silver being in the missiles, like cruise missiles having like something like 200 to 500 ounces of silver per missile. Like, if we made the price of silver go up to like $100 or $200 an ounce, imagine how expensive it would be for the U.S. to create cruise missiles. Imagine how much less war they could wage. How many lives would be saved just by buying silver instead of gold, right? But those upper middle class people would also make their family line much richer over a period of a few hundred years because eventually silver will be worth more than gold. Whether in 200 years or in 1,000 years, eventually silver will be worth more than gold. I think it's inevitable. And then their descendants, if they buy silver instead, these upper middle class guys, and then they pass it on to their kids, to pass on to their kids, to buy more to pass on to their kids, to buy even more to pass on to their kids. Like, if they do that, then their descendants will just be richer and more powerful, right? All because their upper middle class ancestors did the right thing and bought silver instead of gold. And just think about it. Since when does putting profit above principles work out well on a large scale over the long term? It never does. Evil only works out well. It only works to the advantage of an individual or at least a small group, like the Wandering Tribe, and only temporarily. If humanity goes extinct because of our species' selfishness, hedonism, cowardice, and unprincipledness, well then it will kill off all of those unprincipled individuals and groups like the Wandering Tribe as well, and like the upper middle class guys who thought they should buy gold because it's the data-driven choice. Right, so if you want to do what is best for yourself over the long term, and you want to do what is best for your descendants over the long term, and if you want to do what is best for your species over the long term, then you should not be thinking in terms of data, but should be thinking in terms of doing what is morally correct. If upper middle class people buy gold, then they're making gold more rare, and they're thus driving up the price, and by driving up the price, they're making the gold holdings of the rich, the billionaires and others, worth much more than before. And thus upper middle class people, just by doing the data-driven thing, the morally neutral, like I'm not looking at it as an issue of morality, it's just an issue of objective neutral profits. I'm not trying to hurt anybody, but I'm not trying to help anybody either. It's just a math thing. I'm just trying to make money. By just viewing things in that morally neutral way, not an evil way, just a morally neutral way, by just doing the data-driven thing, they are empowering the evil people who run our world. These upper middle class guys are when they buy gold. But if those upper middle class people were instead acting on principle, thinking about what is best for the world and what is best for, what is most moral to do, if they were trying to do what is virtuous, even if it's harder or less profitable, and they were not solely concerned with profit, they'd still be making great money at their job, they'd still be putting away a ton of money in silver, they'd just be making slightly less profit, at most. But of course, like I said, more of them buying silver would mean that silver's price would go way up, and then it would be worth it after all. You know what I mean? It's not like the price of silver and gold would stay what they are now if the upper middle class people started buying silver instead of gold. No, the price of gold would stop going up nearly as much, and especially the price of silver would go way up. Even if gold kept going up like it is, silver would go way up, way more. And then that would be a self-fulfilling prophecy for them for silver. And then, And then they'd have some data to justify buying silver, and then they'd just keep on buying silver generation after generation. And then silver would be very profitable. And then they would not have even lost any money by choosing to do the right thing and buy silver instead of gold. You see? But if they were, not solely concerned with profit, well, then they'd be buying silver and little or no gold. And that would, like I said, drive down the price of gold, and that would make the rich less rich and less powerful, and it would make silver worth more, and that would make the middle class stackers who have lots of silver and not much gold much richer. It wouldn't just make the upper middle class people richer they buy a bunch of silver, and then silver's price goes up, so now they're richer. And when the price goes up, all the other middle class and poor people who have silver, their silver's worth more now too. So now this has greatly empowered not only the upper middle class people who didn't lose any money because they bought silver and that made the price of silver go up, but it also empowered all the other people who own silver, which is mainly just middle class and lower class people. So then they're empowering the 99%, and that will make society more free. The problem with society today is that the little people have no power. Voting is not power. It's a farce. It's a way of controlling people by deceiving them into thinking that they have a say in what their government does, even though they actually don't. The problem today is that the little people have no power, but the elites have tons of power, even to the point where the elites can flagrantly break the law and they can get away with it. Killing people, raping people, etc. And they can totally get away with it, and they do. Whereas regular people cannot even get away with little harmless violations of the rules of the government, like the rule which says you can't smoke marijuana. At least that's the rule in most states. I don't want to say law, because government's so-called laws are not law, because they have nothing to do with natural law. They're often the very opposite of natural law. The government's laws are tyrannical and are thus a violation of our natural rights, our freedom, our God-given freedom, our natural law. Government laws are tyrannical now and are a total violation of natural law. And many things which are not a violation of natural law, like smoking marijuana, are violations of the government's so-called laws. The government legalizes evil things and outlaws harmless things. This is how evil and insane our government is. So, yeah, I wanted to point out that it's immoral for upper middle class people to buy gold just based on the data, instead of also thinking about what is the morally correct thing to do. I mean, if gold is the thing to buy, then why not buy only gold? Then why buy... Well, let's see. If gold is the thing to buy... Yeah, if gold is the thing to buy, then why not buy only gold? Why buy silver at all? Because a lot of these guys do have some silver. They just like gold a lot better, right? So they own a lot more gold. They spend most of their money on gold, but they do have some silver. Why not just allow silver to become completely demonetized, completely unavailable to the public if gold is so great, right? Why not outlaw silver ownership? If we all buy gold, then what's wrong with outlawing silver? People need to think about the morality of their actions and think less about profit. But this is how it is when population increases, and when that population is severely enslaved and thus impoverished, right? When the population increases, the population becomes more enslaved and more impoverished because human life has less value because it's supply and demand. When human life is abundant, it has little value. When human life is rare, like it was in the past, thousands of years ago, then human life has a lot more value. When people are impoverished, then they're money hungry because they don't have enough money. And being more money hungry makes these poor people or middle class people give up their morals, or at least care less about morality. And thus they do things for profit without thinking about consequences to the world. So, by impoverishing the people, by making silver worth less, by only buying gold, these upper middle class people are actually making middle class and lower class people poorer, and thus are making them less moral. If buying gold instead of silver is moral, then buying Ripple is moral too. Ripple is a bank cryptocurrency, and taking government no-bid contracts is moral too. And lots of other things are moral too. I think it's obvious that buying Ripple is not moral, and that taking government no-bid contracts is not moral either. And I think it's therefore a very dubious morality to be buying mostly gold. I don't much blame people if they want to own some gold, maybe even a fair amount of gold, but if they want to mainly own gold and buy gold and not silver, then I think they either don't care about what they're doing, they don't care that it's not a virtuous thing to do, or they've not really thought about it much, which is almost just as bad. It's your first concern when you do something should be, is this moral or not? How hard is that? That's common sense, you know what I mean? If this were the 1800s, then I really would not be thinking about whether buying gold is moral just because rich people own large amounts of it. I'm not a super stickler for morality, but not because it's not important, but because I'm not some nitpicky asshole. You know what I mean? I'm pretty laid back about stuff. I'm very forgiving and stuff. But back then, in the 1800s, society was moral and government was less corrupt. And government was also unimaginably tiny compared to today's government. Today's government is unimaginably huge, inconceivably evil, utterly pervasive. It's got its dirty little fingers in every crevice of our lives. It's insatiably hungry for more power. Government is. It's in league with the corporations and the billionaires to do evil, to enslave us. So since things are so bad today, what with the poverty and the tyranny and all the rest of it, this means that we have to think much more about the morality of our actions, because we have few ways of fighting the billionaires and the government and the corporations, almost all of whom are entirely evil. We need to take voting with our dollars very seriously, because it is one of the very few ways that we have left by which we are able to fight the elites, almost all of whom are wicked people. Whether you buy silver or gold is a form of voting. Just like whether you buy local products or whether you buy products from large multinational corporations, which are being run by people in the Illuminati. All you have to do is see their commercials with Illuminati symbolism to know that these companies are Illuminati. Dove, Doritos, Taco Bell, Ziploc. I've seen so many commercials with Illuminati symbolism. It's amazing. Basically, all major corporations are Illuminati, and by buying their products, you are funding your own enslavement. You are funding child rape and child murder. You are funding the continued suppression of the price of gold and silver, and therefore your ability to accrue wealth. You are funding the feminist brainwashing of young girls and guys, because these multinational corporations are basically all promoting miscegenation and multiculturalism and feminism in their commercials. What you spend your money on is absolutely either a virtuous action or an evil action. I assert that buying silver is more moral than buying gold, especially since silver is the money of the people, and doubly because the people in the upper middle class buying gold are just creating self-fulfilling prophecy, and triply because silver is very extensively used in war, and if upper middle class people bought silver instead of gold, then war would become much more expensive, and thus a lot fewer people would be killed in the world because of there being a hell of a lot less war, because of war being so expensive, because of silver being so expensive. Another thing I want to say is that if a lot more people started buying gold and silver in America, such as 95% of people buying either silver or gold, well then that would lead to a significantly higher price for precious metals. The higher price would make it so that everyone can buy less gold than before, but it'll also make it, or silver or whatever, but it'll also make gold or silver mining more profitable for the miners, and will make it so that less gold-rich land will now be profitable to mine, whereas perhaps it was not profitable before when gold is at a lower price per ounce. More land being mineable due to gold's new higher price means that more gold will be produced before, and then this means that this greater supply of gold will drive the price back down again, at least a little. But it will also mean that due to the greater demand, and somewhat lower price again, though the price would still be higher than it was before 95% of the American public started buying gold and silver every month, this lower price would mean that lots of people would still be able to afford to buy some gold or silver, despite the precious metals' higher cost. Or maybe people would just be buying smaller pieces, such as, 1/10 ounce pieces, or 1/20th ounce pieces, or 1 gram pieces, or even 1/50th of an ounce pieces of gold. Like the Krugerrand makes a 1/50th of an ounce piece of gold. It's pretty crazy, but because that's all they'll be able to afford, those regular people, right? But more people buying will suck up more gold and silver, and this will mean that the dirt being mined will become less and less gold-rich or silver-rich than ever before, and thus this will mean that it will cost more and more money for a mining company to mine 1 ounce of gold, and this will drive the price of gold or silver up permanently, and it will make the floor price of the price, it will make the floor of the price higher than ever before. The price which it cannot drop below. You know what I mean? That price will get higher and higher as the more expensive ounces are the only ounces they can get out of the ground now, because all the cheaper ounces from the more gold-rich dirt were already sold off. And gold doesn't re-enter circulation a whole lot. I mean, it does enough to where gold is liquid, but not very much compared to how much it's stored, right? So then the price won't just be higher because the higher demand from the American public wanting to buy gold. It'll be higher because the mining cost is higher, because now they're mining only far less gold-rich dirt, or far less silver-rich dirt, Wouldn't you like the mining cost of silver to be much higher so that the price of silver goes up permanently? If 95% of the American people were buying as much silver as they could each month, then a lot more silver would be sucked up, leading to shortages which lead to higher prices. Higher prices make mining more profitable. More profitability and an ability to make a profit on land with an amount of silver that it was never economical to mine in earlier years means that more silver will be produced, and that will only make silver more rare. But that will only make silver more rare. It will only increase the cost that it takes to get 1 ounce of silver out of the ground, thus permanently raising the price of silver no matter how large or small the demand for silver is. Because once silver is, all the really rich silver mines have been depleted, and now you can't get silver out of the ground for anything less than $30 an ounce, just for the miners to break even. much less make a profit. When you can't get any silver out of the ground for less than $30 an ounce, then it really is the case that $30 is the price that silver cannot drop below. And probably, considering they got to sell it to the refiners sell it to the mints, who sell it to the other people, the distributors or whatever, who sell it to the coin shops and the online stores, like they each take their cut. So the price has to be above the mining cost. So if it takes $30 to get it out of the ground, it's probably more like, 32 or 33 or something like that, or maybe a little more for it to actually, end up in the coin shops or end up in your hand, So, no matter how large or small the demand for silver is at that point, almost all the demand could dry up and the silk price would not drop below 30 or 33 or 35 an ounce at that point. You know what I mean? So, the price will permanently go up, especially as more demand goes up. And the upper middle class guys buying only silver could make the price go way up. And then once it goes way up, the sheeple will jump on the bandwagon. And then them buying it too will drive it up even higher. And then, people will start wanting physical. The silver will get sucked out of the stores of SLV, making SLV unsustainable anymore. They'll have to stop doing the whole SLV price suppression thing. And then, silver gets even higher because they can't suppress it with SLV anymore. You see what I mean? So, like, by not buying silver, the upper middle class guys are enacting not only a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of gold going up, but they're enacting a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of silver never going up. Right? Like, silver never goes up. Well, the reason silver never goes up is because the upper middle class people don't buy it, and thus it doesn't go up, and thus, the sheep will never jump on the bandwagon, so then it never goes up a lot. But if the upper middle class guys did buy silver instead of gold, everybody would jump on the bandwagon, then silver's price would go insanely high. Probably $100 an ounce or more. I mean, it went up to like 49 or $50 an ounce, in 2011. So considering all the inflation since then, 9 years of inflation, 5% per year, yeah, I think silver could easily go up to $100 an ounce. And that's like a conservative estimate. That's not even like an insane peak. That's just even starting to get popular. I mean, that's even just when I don't know what the percentage of the population was buying back in 2011 is more than usual, but it was still not anywhere close to even, 10 or 20% of the U.S. population buying silver. I mean, imagine if 10 or 20 or 30 or 50% of the U.S. population buying silver. The price would be probably hundreds of dollars an ounce, maybe thousands. I mean, and this is all possible if just the upper middle class guys, grow a brain, grow a conscience, and start buying silver instead of gold. Upper middle class guys, as well as more sheeple buying silver, would make the silver way more rare. And then by making it way more rare, this permanently raises the price by raising the mining cost because of all the cheaper silver having been sold off already. Thus making everybody's silver holdings worth much more once the floor price that it can never drop below because the mining cost has now raised up to, 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever. We can make the price of silver much higher because of all the low-cost silver having been mined already. I mean, it's one thing to say that when you compare the debt to the amount of silver mined each year, when you compare the GDP to silver, when you compare the debt to the amount of above-ground silver, then it shows the price of silver should be much higher. That's true, but it's something else to say that the price of silver has been raised permanently because of the mining cost of silver having gone up, because of silver having become more rare, because of more people buying silver. Like, that's something totally different. Right? So you can permanently raise the price of silver by making it more rare by more people buying it. I think buying silver is a moral act and buying gold is a somewhat unvirtuous act. And if you disagree, then you need to have very clear and moral reasons for thinking so. Don't view things in an amoral, data-driven way. That's how our psychopathic enslaving masters view things. They view everything in a morally relative, morally ambiguous, amoral kind of way. And look at how screwed up the environment, the economy, the culture, and everything else is as a result of the amoral view possessed by those who rule our world. Our world is all screwed up because of their amoral view. More morality would make the world a way better place. If there were way more moral billionaires instead of just one or two or three, then the world would be a way, 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 way better place. Moral actions have good effects, and moral actions only come from a moral viewpoint. You cannot have an amoral viewpoint and do wise, good deeds that benefit the world. Your deeds come from your viewpoint. Your viewpoint determines what you will do. And when you have an amoral viewpoint, you will do bad deeds, selfish deeds, foolish, short-sighted deeds, and you will thus wreak havoc on tons of people by doing those bad deeds. You'll even wreak havoc on yourself much of the time by way of the backlash that happens because of your deeds being immoral due to your amoral viewpoint. Amorality is not really moral neutrality. It's basically the root of evil, amorality is. It seems less pernicious than it is, but lots of evil people at the top are not sadistic monsters like the BTK killer. A lot of them are just amoral people with high IQs and great memories, and perhaps a fair amount of charisma as well. You know, they're not necessarily trying to destroy the world or be super evil. They're just trying to, like, you know, well, you know, it's the system, and this is the way it is, and, you know, I'm just trying to make money and survive and be successful, so I just got to do whatever works. You know, that amoral attitude leads to a lot of destructive behavior, you know, short-sighted destructive behavior that doesn't seem destructive, but long-term, when everybody's acting that way, especially everybody at the top in power is acting that way, it leads to utterly horrific effects that last for decades and decades. You know, these are amoral people at the top. You know, the politicians, the banksters, the people on Wall Street, the people in Hollywood, etc. You know, they're amoral people who are consequently selfish, dishonest, greedy, etc. as a result of their amorality, which is usually inborn, the amorality, but is also shaped by their amoral parents' bad example, and by the bad influence of the world we now live in, you know, which also makes them worse. You know, a world which has become evil. I mean, a lot of them are sadistic, but I'll bet a lot of them were not born sadistic. They were just born amoral, morally blind, and then the power that their wealth and intelligence gave to them eventually corrupted them and turned them sadistic. Also, possessing little or no ability to feel or reciprocate love makes them like women in that they're more likely to be sadistic because they can't feel the normal happiness that comes from being able to care about other people. This has been Redshift. I hope someone understood my point in this video and gives some serious thought to the morality of what they buy, not just whether they buy gold or silver, but also whether they buy local products or products from multinational corporations that are in the Illuminati. And multinational corporations are basically all in the Illuminati. So, you know, buying from multinational corporations is a bad deed. You're funding the evil. You know, but if you buy local products, you're not funding the evil and you're not funding the Illuminati. So you're actually helping yourself and your community and everybody else, even if those things cost more money. But like I said in that video, buy local, or whatever that video is called, you know, like doing a principled act like that is something that, you know, makes you want to keep doing it because it's a moral act. And so you're going to try to do whatever it takes so that you can keep buying locally, even if it's more expensive, such as by using the product more frugally so that you make the bar of soap or the tube of toothpaste or whatever it is last longer, you know. So this has been Redshift. Hope you like this video. Peace, trucks.